We're back with Mike, Sarah, and Christy. Mike, I know you've covered the law firms and the universities doing deals. I think you've called them paper Truth Social deals with Donald Trump. Do they seem cognizant in your coverage of them that Trump is at the lowest approval of his presidency? I think the newest number, the one Sarah just talked about, he's at 37%, and that's after bouncing about 20 points up for his work in the Middle East last week. This is an all-time low approval rating, 61% disapprove. He's underwater, I think, more than 20 points on the economy, close to 20 points on immigration, and yet they all still seem to be lining up to capitulate.
I don't think the law firms care. I think they just care that they're able, their bottom line was not impacted and they're able to do the business that they can. It was a purely economic decision, and a firm
so their brands aren't part of their economics.
I think they can survive it, and that it was more important to basically they thought that Brad Karp thought that Paul Weiss was going to go out of business if they didn't do this deal. The problem is that every firm that fought is still standing, and they've all won in court. So they can argue whatever they're going to argue. But the thing that I was wondering about, that I actually wanted to ask Sarah about, is what Trump. To me, it seems like Trump has an incredible amount of momentum right now. It doesn't seem like anything can really stand in his way. But at the same time, it seems like he might be setting himself up for it's politically risky to be so focused on retribution and to be so focused on immigration, because there's so many other things that could go wrong. And is there, from the political perspective, and from what Americans see when they look at this, is there a risk here in retribution, just not even in the sense of the fact that Americans think that he's not paying attention to the most important things, but that if something were to go wrong and people say, well, what was the FBI up to? And the answer is that they were up to different retribution, conspiracy investigations and such, or at least that's the perception. Is he, at the same time that he looks like he has a lot of momentum, in a much riskier place than maybe he thinks he's in?
Look, I think he's in an incredibly risky place, and largely because I hear frustrations with voters that are from all different sides. You've got a lot of the MAGA voters, whether it's the Epstein files or the fact that he's too focused on helping Israel, or that he's sending money to Argentina. Everybody is frustrated right now. There's a reason I think his numbers are that low, despite the fact that I think in terms of big picture things, you might say he's had some wins. But the fact is, the American people do not feel like those wins are redounding to them. They are glad, they want the border secure, but they think he's going too far with the ICE raids. And so, right now, the only way to fight back politically, right, there's really two ways. One is to show up at something like No Kings and demonstrate the opposition. And the other is for them to win, for Democrats to win the 2026 midterms in a way that allows for real oversight, which Donald Trump is absolutely, he's so scared of, right? He's so scared of this oversight. And so for me, what I see as because Donald Trump, regardless of whether you think he's going to try not to leave, he's not up for re-election again. And so his real political liability lies in the midterms, and there being oversight from people that uncovers all the corruption that he's been doing, some measure of accountability. Because right now there is no accountability. And if I were some of these civic leaders who've been letting him off the hook time after time, I would remember that there's a future. This idea that Trump's not going to be in charge forever, all of these things he's doing right now, weaponizing the IRS, these things can come back at them. He is changing the country we live in, and they will have to live in it later when the Democrats are in charge. And so I think that's the risk, is that people it starts to occur to them that Trump is not forever. And they start to, at some point, say, I'm going to look back at the people who capitulated to this guy, especially when he leaves office at a 29% approval rating, because he did nothing about the economy and just tried to put his political enemies in jail.
Yeah, I mean, Christy, this is the brand question that I keep trying to understand. I mean, he's at 37% right now. There's no upward push in any of the polls, right? So he was at about 39 2 weeks ago, 39 to 41. That number has dropped to 37 to 39, which is, as Sarah's talking about, the people's feelings about the economy and feeling like he's distracted from the thing that they sent him there to do is making them feel bad about everything. But the brand is capitulation, right? So even if these law firms or universities don't feel like they'll be tainted by the ICE raids because they're not out there with masks on their face, they are capitulating to someone of historic weakness. Why do you think that's still happening, like in a zombie trance kind of way?
I mean, I think on the other side, there needs to be more leadership. I mean, what we're seeing this weekend is grassroots, people coming together to say this is not okay. But where are the leaders of the institutions to come in and defend those institutions, defend their work? I mean, we're starting to hear some of it, but we need more. We need, I mean, again, Barack Obama coming out and calling out those law firms, calling out those universities, that was great. Do more of that. You know, same with Jack Smith's interview with Andrew Weissman. I mean, it was such a breath of fresh air to hear him speak. I don't think we had heard him speak throughout because you're not supposed to under the rules. He was following the rules, but those cases are closed now. We can hear from you, and we can't read your report because, at least as to the classified documents, DOJ has been hiding that. But you can still speak. You can still defend yourself. When you only hear one side and the other side is capitulating, it just becomes skewed. And I think a lot of Americans who maybe feel like we don't like what Trump is doing, but we're not seeing what the alternative is other than people cowering, that's not a very attractive alternative. So you need people to stand up. We need actual leadership to really rise to the occasion and take him on. And yes, he has the power of government, but he may not always have the power of government if we actually use our voices.